The Secret World of Arrietty. Let me be perfectly honest with you people and say that, except for Spirited Away, I haven't seen any other Studio Ghibli film. Or Ghibli, or Beebly, or Heebie-Jeebies, or whatever. I know I must have horrified those who always request me to do animation look-back Studio Ghibli, but I do have a good reason. They are pretty expensive. I don't know about other places in the world, but where I'm from, those films cost like $30 each. And that's just the DVD. That, and they don't often come to my theaters either. Anyways, back to Arrietty. Will this film be another signature work of Hayao Miyazaki? Or will they hope that this movie is small enough for people to forget it? Let's find out. The story. There isn't much of a story, but introduces us to a new kind of creature called the Borrowers, which are Don Bluth's Thumbelina-sized humans, who live like civilized people, who take small things that we big people won't mind losing and uses that for their state of living or food. And no, they don't borrow because that would imply that they would give it back. Anyways, the way that Ghibli shows us these borrowers is really fascinating. They bring us these questions about their lifestyle, their relationship with the humans, and the population of the borrowers that really wants us to learn more about them. However, a flaw in this is that sometimes they wouldn't go into it that much to give us the true answer. An example would be that they say that the borrowers are an endangered species. Another borrower came in and said that there's more, and then he left and the movie just goes on to another scene, never mentioning it again. In terms of the story itself, it's mostly about the relationship of Arrietty, a young borrower, and Sean, a young human. Or Sho if you've seen the Japanese or UK version. It's actually very strong and you can really feel for the characters, but as it goes on, I felt that there was a little bit of a vibe of that Pocahontas or Avatar story. You know what I'm talking about. But like I said, there's only a tiny bit of that. There isn't enough to be really noticeable. Other than a few questions left unanswered, it's been a while since I enjoyed a more serious story in an animated film. The animation. Studio Ghibli is very notorious for its very creative animation and how it brings us to new worlds. It may not seem like it in this movie at first, but oddly enough, it does. Just by shrinking the people really small, we see the regular world in a whole new way. Even better than how Honey, I Shrunk the Kids did. It really shows how just ordinary things can become so huge or such a big obstacle, and I think that's what helps to make us intrigued by the borrowers, and it helps us to see what they go through, like just finding a sugar cube is such a mountain climbing adventure. Back onto the animation itself, the character design and character animation is the usual Ghibli style, with the simple anime look of the characters, the simple and clean design on them, to the very fluent hand-drawn character animation. But what I loved about the animation in Arrietty is the background animation, because the areas the characters live in look like a painting. Actually, scratch that. Everything is literally a painting. For me, some of the most memorable scenes are when the characters would just relax and we get to look at the entire plains where they're relaxing, and it is just beautiful to look at. If you guys need a break from computer animation and need some good old 2D style animation, even if it's anime, then this film is exactly for you. The characters. There aren't a lot of characters in this movie, but in this case, less is more. First, there's Arrietty, who is the kind that thinks she can, but because she's young, she really can't. It may seem a little cliche, but there's so much character into Arrietty. She's a little more open-minded, not really a fighter, but adventurous, and when she screws something up, she knows it. There are times where we can feel for her and will support her when she wants to talk to Sean. Then there are her parents, like Homily, who is pretty much the worrying mother, but knowing about the borrowers and how they are an endangered species, we can understand why she would worry often. Then there's Pod, the dad, who is like the closed-minded leader of the group. Then there's a special group who all share the same problem. They're all underdeveloped by one thing. There's just this one thing the movie forgets to tell us about them that we really want to know. First, there's Sean, the boy who saw Arrietty, who's actually a pretty tragic character. Not only are his parents too busy to see him, but he's also dying and needs heart surgery. And he's been like that all his life, so he couldn't play with other kids. Some may think that this is pushing it, but I find that it makes him more sympathetic, and it helps to make the relationship between him and Arrietty stronger. There's also Spiller, who is a very interesting character because he's like a savage borrower and knows the world outside of where Arrietty's family lives. But he doesn't appear on screen that often than he should. He comes in like, hey, I found your dad injured, and yeah, there's more borrowers than me, and then he left. And then there's Haru, who I think is the maid of the house and also the villainish of the movie. But there's one thing that really irritates me about her, and it's that her purpose with the borrowers isn't clear. Does she want them for money? Does she want to eat them? Does she want them dead? I don't know! She's such a great character, but I just want to know, what does she want with them? Like the story, the characters may be underdeveloped, but they sure are interesting, strong, and really likable. The Secret World of Arrietty is a great addition to the Studio Ghibli family with an interesting story that shows us a new breed of people, beautiful animation, and well-developed characters, even if the movie forgot to tell us some important things. Just by seeing this, I feel curious to see more Studio Ghibli films. I always hear that they are so amazing. Maybe I should save up and start getting some of Miyazaki's best. That, or I could start making a wish list on Amazon.com. I think 2012 is starting off with a bang with animated films, because this one is worthy enough for the AniMat's seal of approval.